Hey guys, in this project we're going to be building a PHP blog called PHP Lovers Blog, which is basically just a simple newsreel of PHP releases, conferences, events, things like that. And I created this simple logo. This layout is actually a Bootstrap template that I customized. So we're going to be implementing Bootstrap. Very simple though, basically just using a template and just changing up the colors, things like that. Alright, so basically it'll store posts in categories inside of a MySQL database. We'll have those will be the two tables, posts and categories. The posts will have a title, a date, a formatted date, an author, and of course the content. Alright. Over here we have just a simple blurb, which is just an about text, and then we have the list of categories which are being pulled from the database. And if we click on a category, up here you can see that we have the get variable category set to whatever the ID is, and then it'll only show posts from that category. Alright, so if we click on design, we don't have any posts in design, so it's just going to give us a no post message. Alright, and if we click on a post, it'll take us to that page. Very, very simple. And also, we're going to have an admin section. Alright, so if we go to admin, we're not going to implement a user login and registration with this project, only because it takes up too much time. We will create a registration with our next project, which will be a forum, and I just wanted to use the whole registration thing in one project, because otherwise every project that would take up a large amount of time to implement that in every project. So basically we just go to this URL /admin, and we have our list of posts and categories. We can click add post. Alright, we can create a post, we can select the category, put in the author, tags if we want. We can also of course add a category, and then here we can actually click on the post and we can edit the content of the post and save it, and we can also delete it. Alright, so basic CRUD operations. Alright, create, read, update, and delete. Alright, and then we have this visit blog, which just takes us to the front end. Alright, so that's what we'll be building in this chapter. Like I always do, we're going to create the user interface first. Well, actually first we'll create the database and then the interface, and then move on to the PHP files. Now this project, the file structure will be a little different. It's going to be more organized than our first and second project. We will be using more object-oriented programming, although the next project will have a significantly more object-oriented functionality. Alright, so let's get to it. I'm going to close this out. And this page here, this lipsum.com, is basically just dummy content that I'm going to use for the blog, for the posts. So what I want to do first is the user interface. So I'm going to go to the htdocs folder and rename the finished blog to done. And then we can create our own folder to work in. Alright, so we're going to create the structure, and it's a bit more organized than what we've been doing. Alright, so I'm going to create a folder called libraries, and from now on, from here in the next projects to come, we'll be using more and more object-oriented programming, so we'll have more and more classes that we'll be using. Alright, so we can create objects that belong to classes, and this particular project we're going to have a database class. Alright, so I'm going to go in there and I'm going to create a new document, and I'm going to call this database.php. And what this is going to be our own class. We're going to actually create it from scratch, and it's just going to allow us to run queries, to run select queries, select multiple table queries, inserts, updates, things like that. And it's going to be really simple, and it's not going to be too it's not something you'd want to use on a big production site. You'd probably want to use something like PDO and prepared statements, like we will in the next chapter, in the next project. But I just want to get you familiar with using classes and object-oriented programming. Alright, so what else do we want here? We want to have obviously our template folders, which will be the CSS folder. And we're just going to put these right in the root for now, for this project. In the next project, we'll actually create a template class, and we'll have basically a template folder that'll hold this stuff. But for this project, we're just going to put it all right in the root. We want a fonts folder for the Bootstrap template. We're going to have a helpers folder, which is just going to be random functions that can basically do things like format dates, things like that. We'll have an images folder, and let's see what else we want. A JavaScript folder. We're not going to really do any JavaScript. It's basically just for the Bootstrap JavaScript template. We're going to have an includes folder, which is going to have things like our header file, our header and footer, so that we don't have to add all that code into every single view file. So we'll just have one header and footer that will include. Alright, so that's actually, we want to create one more folder called admin, and that's going to hold the files that allow us to add a new post, things like that, edit posts. Alright, and we're going to create also a config folder, which is going to hold just one configuration file where we can just specify certain configurations. Alright, we'll have an index file, which obviously is going to be our entry point, and it'll have all the latest posts, and we're going to have a posts.php file, and that's going to be the main, not the main index page, but the post page, and we'll be able to filter through by category as well. So it'll show, if we select the design category, it'll only show posts that are in the design category. All right, and then finally we want post.php, which is going to represent just a single post. So it'll be a pretty simple file. So these files will be our output files. Okay, so this is what the user will actually see. Like I said, in the next project we'll have a template class, and we'll be able to put all our templates into one folder. But for this project, I want to gradually get to that point because it's a little more complicated. Alright, so the quiz, obviously the first project, everything was right in the file, all the queries, everything. And then in the second project, the quiz project, we kind of just had we had a database file, everything was in the root directory. Now we're getting a little bit more structure. We'll be using a class, a database class, and then from here on we'll just we'll gradually work up to an advanced PHP application. So let's go ahead and create the rest of the files. The admin folder is going to have quite a few. It's actually going to have its own includes because it's going to have a different header and footer than our front end app. Alright, yeah, and inside there we'll just create a couple files. Okay, we want header.php. footer.php. Oh. Alright, and we'll have a couple files here. We're going to have add category, add posts, edits category, edit post, and of course our index. Alright, so that's it for the admin. We already have our libraries, our database file. Classes, by convention, should have an uppercase letter to start with. Alright, it's not mandatory, but it's a very common convention, and it's just something that I've always done. Config, we're going to have one file in here called config.php. CSS, we're going to create, actually we're going to do that when we get the bootstrap template. We'll put in those files. Same thing with fonts. Helpers, we're going to have a formatting helper. Okay, so I'm going to create a file called format underscore helper. Helper.php. And let's see, includes, we need a header and footer. I'm just going to copy these here that we did in the admin section. Okay, JavaScript we'll leave. Alright, so that's good. That's our structure for now. In the next video we will create our UI. Like I said, we're going to use a bootstrap template and we're going to just customize it a little bit.